Before we start, this video was sponsored by Sunken Isles. It's a giant D&D adventure set on islands in the high seas. Look at all this cool stuff. From what I know, having props and amazing art always gets Dungeon Masters in the mood to host games. A big part of this adventure is the gimmick of limited exploration. The party can't be everywhere at once, and with such a massive region to explore, sacrifices must be made. If any of that interests you, check out the link down below. And with that said, let's get right back to the video. D&D is a drug of a game that I've been addicted to even before I knew it existed. When I was younger, old CD computer games were considered top-tier entertainment, and it just so happened that we had a copy of Baldur's Gate 2 in the collection. Most of you have no idea what that game is, but essentially it was D&D 2nd edition, but as a video game. Even though it had massive flaws like difficulty scaling, the need to spam 1,000 magical buffs before every fight, and the lack of any actual turn order, it was still loads of fun and one of my first experiences with role-playing games. I no-lifed Baldur's Gate 2 for most of my childhood, but wouldn't find out until years later that I was actually playing D&D 2nd edition. Fast traveling into the future, and eventually I overhear a conversation about some game called Dungeons & Dragons. Wow, this thing sounds a lot like that Baldur's Gate game I used to play. I ran home to find the disc set, and plain as day, it had the Wizards of the Coast logo on it. The veil over my eyes had finally been lifted, with 5e having been out for a few years already, and learning that it was created by the people in charge of my favorite computer game, I knew I had to try it out. After getting the starter set in the mail, I quickly got into reading the rules and hosted a session on the same day. Besides the fact that I threw any creativity and fun out of the window to be a super nerd for stats and numbers, it was a small taste for the potential that the game had. I was determined to become a better DM and started hosting more campaigns with the good old fam. Around 2 years later, and one of the longest campaigns I've ever ran had finally come to an end. I was all grown up now, both as a dungeon master and as a person, sorta, and with high school over, it was time to get a job. The stores near my house were always hiring for minimum wage workers, so that wasn't a problem. But while working, I tried setting up a few side hustles to make a bit of extra cash, and eventually found a role-playing website called Roll20 that had a unique feature on it: pay-to-play tabletop games. Yeah, although you could jump into most campaigns completely free, a few dungeon masters were offering a premium experience for a monthly fee. In return, they promised to prepare materials for the game, show up on time, and ensure all the players would do the same. Now, as a money-deprived teenager, the thought of hosting D&D games and making money at the same time was like a dream come true. Yeah, I think I have enough experience in D&D to host a professional campaign. I'll host 3 or 4 games a week, and using the subscription cost of every player, won't have to work another day in my life. Spoiler alert, that doesn't come close to happening. First off, the only campaign I knew how to run was the Lost Mines of Phandelver. It goes from levels 1 through 5, so if I was going to keep this gig running, I'd need to read up on more modules. And secondly, sure, I had experience with D&D, but zero experience with other human beings. As an incredibly sheltered teenager, I had no clue how people outside of my family functioned, which got me into some hot water on multiple occasions. Like this one time, I thought using flanking rules could be fun in combat, and when one of the party members got flanked by an enemy, the player started yelling at me, insisting I change the rule, or they'd immediately leave the campaign. What, did flanking rules burn down your house and steal your wife? Chill. Not knowing any better, I legitimately thought I was the problem, and afterwards wrote an essay-length apology for him. He left the campaign 3 days later. Looking back now, that guy was just a piece of garbage. After a few more weeks of hosting online games, I wasn't having much luck. Most of the remaining campaigns came crashing down with players who left for all sorts of reasons. Oh, you have school coming up and need to leave even though you just joined the campaign a week ago? Good luck, hope you enjoy getting some A's. Your dog just passed away the session after your character died? I'm so sorry to hear that. Feel free to mourn away from this campaign for as long as you need. I mean, if they were telling the truth, then I'm super overthinking this, but looking back, those were just white lies to get out of my terrible campaign. In a last-ditch effort to keep this hobby profitable, I tried to host more campaigns taking place in one of my homebrew worlds. I got a group together, and on the day of the first session, one person failed to show up, another disconnected from the Discord call halfway through, and I was left with 2 remaining players. Now I wasn't in the best headspace. Realizing that I was a fool for thinking any of this was a practical idea, that I didn't have the charisma or talent to keep a campaign together, and that I should just stay in my lane and focus on my normal job already, I shut down my PC mid-session and avoided D&D for a few months. I think a big reason why this happened was because I started treating the players like customers and the game like a business. Hello sir, thank you for joining the game. Our monthly membership fee is $8 and the first session is 25% off. Had a terrible sense of humor. Everywhere you look, you see a little green wiggly worm. Maybe if you talk to it, he'll tell you a joke. And pretended like I had the endurance to keep multiple weekly campaigns afloat. Life lesson, hobbies don't always need to become profitable. well. I know that's ironic coming from someone who makes D&D YouTube videos for a living nowadays, but if I didn't take a step back and realize how damaging to my mental health all of this was becoming, I wouldn't be where I am today. I know a lot of people dream about making money off what makes them happy, but ultimately, it can lead them down a dangerous path that sometimes kills the passion you had. Whether you're a painter who can never find work, to a singer who's self-conscious of their voice, all the way down to the rookie dungeon master who's in over his head. After a few month break, I got enough energy to crawl out of this D&D shaped hole I dug for myself and tried to give the community another go. I'm sure I'll get tired of the game eventually, but after some self-reflection and the willingness to change, things have gotten a lot more tolerable. For any dungeon masters who are currently going down the pay-to-play D&D rabbit hole, I give you major kudos if you can keep a group of players enjoying the game you run. Being able to connect with total strangers and host a memorable game takes more talent than you might think. The position of Dungeon Master is one of unlimited power, and not everyone knows how to handle it in a way that keeps players laughing and cheering at the table. I still doubt my ability to host fun games to this day. So yeah, as usual, hope someone out there can learn from my hilarious mistakes, consider subscribing so I can continue to self-indulge on my failures in more videos, and I'll see you all next time.